I wrote the novel, and it was about 350 pages long in manuscript, and I thought that I had pulled something together that would be my first published work. I was very conscious of the fact that something had happened with this material that had not happened with other things I'd attempted to write. And I felt at that point that I would send it out until I found a publisher, and if I did not find a publisher, I would publish it myself. Well, I started mailing it out, and I had some names, and eventually it went to 5 different people. I think 2 were agents and 3 were editors. And it took about 9 months. And during that time, it was turned down by those people. And I was not deterred. I was not particularly shocked or insulted. I just kept going. One agent sent it back. She said, "I don't know what this is." She said, "It doesn't seem to be black comedy. It doesn't seem to be tongue-in-cheek, and if it's not those things, I don't know what it is. So obviously I'm not the agent for it." One of the other people said it doesn't have any plot, story, or characters to make it a hardcover book, but if you publish it as a paperback with a sexy, lurid cover, quite literally this person said this, if you publish it as a paperback with a sexy, lurid cover on the true facts about vampires, it might sell. But I don't want to publish it. So I didn't think too much about that. I just kept on going. I went to a writers' conference called the Squaw Valley Community of Writers. And while I was there, I met an editor and an agent. And the agent picked it up and said she would handle it. And when she got back to New York, she sent it to the editor who'd been there. And that editor picked it up with tremendous enthusiasm for Alfred A. Knopf. And I got that call on my birthday, about 9 months after the novel was finished, and they said, "Would you believe Alfred A. Knopf has flipped over your novel? They want to offer you an advance of," and it was, for the time, it was a huge advance. It was $12,000, and that was very big in 1974. That was a very big advance. I think first novels generally got 5. So we were off and running with that. And the editor wrote to me, and she said, she made some suggestions. She said, "We feel it's very, very good." She went on at length about what she liked about it. And then she said, "We feel it sort of peters out at the end, that you're kind of tired by the end, and if you could, you know, in essence, if you could work on the ending, you know, we would love for you to do that." So I took her letter and I sat down with it, and what eventually happened was I wrote another 200 pages and completely radically changed the whole thing. In the original draft, the vampires had gone to Paris seeking other vampires. They'd found them, and they lived happily ever after. In the new draft, I created the Theater of the Vampires. Tragedy befell the child vampire Claudia. I mean, it was 200 more pages. I mean, it was, so I sent it back with trepidation, thinking, well, you know, this is not the novel that they signed on to buy. But they were very, very pleased with it. The editor then said, "We have to cut it. It's just, we've got to do this. Can you, let's go through it." And she went through various places where she said, "This goes on a little too long. This, I think, doesn't work." We took out sentences. I didn't think this was a terrible violation. I thought we were able to do that successfully in a number of places. She had some small comments about texture and language here and there. There was a point where Louis the vampire told a story that she thought was a little mundane and detracted from the book. I agree with her. You know, we took out that little story. It was a very amicable process. It was very amicable. We ended up with the book. We were very enthusiastic about it. This went from 74 to 76, basically. I did the revisions. We talked about it some more. Finally went to the copy editors. The copy editor at that time went over it with incredible detail, changing the word order of sentence after sentence after sentence. And I changed them all back. I just kept writing "stet" in the margin, which is what means put it back the way it was. And that, to me, was more upsetting than anything that really happened on the book. It was the fact that copy editors, who are essentially people who correct grammar, punctuation, spelling, and inconsistencies, they sometimes try to rewrite your book. And that's essentially what this copy editor had done. And that was so harrowing to me, putting that "stet," and just being so frightened of having the tone of my work, the sound of it changed. It taught me how much style means to me and how much the way a sentence is shaped means to me. It means as much as what the character says or what the character does or what happens in the story. But I got through it. I mean, the Knopf copy editors are very respecting. They put it all back. And they do catch spelling. I didn't know how to spell. I mean, I misspelled, I don't know how many words. They corrected all that. I've learned how to spell over the years from copy editors, you know, correcting my spelling. Finally learned to spell shoulders with a U, you know, instead of just an O. But things like that. I think I'm right on that. But anyway, that was basically the process. After the copy editing, you get the bound galleys of the book, or you get the loose galleys, and this is the book set in type. And you get another chance at that point to go through and change anything you want and add anything you want. And I had added several pages in copy editing. And I think I added maybe a paragraph here and there and a lot of small changes in the galleys. You do this in ink, and if you get too carried away and you change too much, you can be charged for the type resetting. But that didn't happen with me. I just made my final changes, and basically every book now goes pretty much like that. I no longer really submit an incomplete or a rough draft. For years I've submitted the completed draft of a book, and I'm very resistant to any suggestions to change it, but I do listen very carefully to what my editor has to say, and then I go through those processes of copy editing and galleys and page proof corrections very diligently to try to perfect that manuscript and get it to be the way I want. I have a very good editor. I've been with her for over 30 years, and I very much respect her. She knows all my work, and she's wonderfully intuitive and wonderfully supportive, and she says brilliant things. But I should add here, authors vary a lot in the way they respond to editing. I like to finish things, and I really have a very hard time seeing someone make a stylistic change. I almost always have to negate that and mark it out. But there are other authors I know who work very well with editors who will go through with a blue pencil and mark out all kinds of things and change all kinds of things. And those authors are fine with it. They want that. They feel that that's part of what they're doing. It's okay with them. So I think this relationship is a very personal one, and it varies depending on how that author feels about style or storytelling or direction or suggestions. And the ultimate thing is the author is the final judge. You take those suggestions, you make what changes you can. If you don't like the suggestions, if you can't make those changes, you don't. And usually it works out pretty well. It works out pretty well. I found very early on that the type of suggestions and criticisms an editor gives you are very, very different from what you can hear from your friends and from a writing class. I thought a lot about that at the time because I would visit writers' groups with friends of mine, and I would listen to what went on in the groups, and very often there was sort of an endless critical atmosphere. Nobody in any group that I ever went to ever said, that book's finished, send it off, or that's really good, don't touch it. They never said this. They were always offering all kinds of suggestions and all kinds of criticism, and the author's obligation in those groups sometimes was to just get through that without being completely confused. And there were some of these authors, by the way, liked these groups a lot, and they were very encouraged by them, and they did well with them. But when you get to working with an editor from a major house, the whole thrust is to move forward. This person sees you as a success already. This person wants you to be a success, and there will be a discipline to the type of remarks that person makes. It's not the open-ended, change everything criticism that you sometimes get in an unstructured writers group. It's not the off-the-wall criticism you get from the person in the group who may think you're crazy. You know, this is all coming from somebody who's accepted this book, believes in it, believes in you, and wants to work with this book through the publishing process. So it has a cleanness that is an economy that's really very good and very inspiring. But I've known authors who've had agony during this process. They have teamed up with editors that they didn't agree with. They were desperate to be published, but they were miserable over what was suggested. So bad things can happen in that realm too.